Death is inevitable. We all know that. But some people throughout history have managed to kick the bucket in ways so spectacularly stupid, so mind-numbingly idiotic, that you can't help but laugh at their corpses. We're not talking about tragic accidents or honorable deaths in battle. Nah, we're talking about absolute morons who literally offed themselves through sheer, unfiltered stupidity. From dancing until their hearts exploded to drowning in a tsunami of beer, these dimwits found the most absurd ways to croak. So, grab your popcorn and prepare to feel like a genius, because no matter how dumb you think you are, at least you didn't shoot yourself in the guts trying to win a court case. Let's dive in. Picture this. You're a hotshot lawyer in 1871 Ohio, defending a client accused of murder. Your entire defense hinges on proving that the victim actually shot himself accidentally during a bar fight. So Clement Vallandigham decided to demonstrate exactly how the victim could have blown his own brains out. Vallandigham grabbed what he thought was an unloaded pistol and began his dramatic reenactment. See, the victim reached for his gun like this, fumbled with it like this, and bang! Except there was one tiny problem. The gun was actually loaded, like fully loaded with a real bullet, ready to rip through flesh. Mid-demonstration, Vallandigham accidentally shot himself in the exact same way he claimed the victim had died. The bullet tore through his abdomen, shredding intestines and turning his insides into a bloody mess. He stumbled backwards, clutching his bleeding gut, probably thinking, "Oh, that's not supposed to happen." He lingered for about 12 agonizing hours, bleeding internally, his organs slowly failing, before finally croaking. But hey, at least he proved his point, right? His client was actually acquitted because Vallandigham's death perfectly demonstrated that the shooting could have been accidental. Talk about dedication to your craft. Most lawyers would just use diagrams, but not Vallandigham. He went full method actor and paid the ultimate price. My guy, maybe check if the gun is loaded next time. Oh wait, there is no next time. You're dead. Whoops. Tycho Brahe was a legendary Danish astronomer in the late 1500s who made groundbreaking contributions to our understanding of the cosmos. He was brilliant, respected, and had a sick metal nose after losing part of his real one in a duel over math. But despite all his intelligence, he died in the most embarrassingly preventable way possible. He refused to take a piss. Brahe attended a lavish banquet in Prague in 1601. Back in those days, leaving the table during a formal dinner was considered extremely rude. So when Brahe felt the urgent call of nature mid-feast, his bladder screaming for relief, he decided to just hold it. And hold it. And hold it some more. For hours, this absolute madman sat there with a bladder swelling up like a water balloon ready to pop, too polite to excuse himself and drain the main vein. He could feel the pressure building, his lower abdomen cramping, his kidneys probably crying for mercy, but nope. Gotta maintain that social etiquette. By the time the banquet finally ended and he could stumble to the bathroom, the damage was already done. His bladder had stretched beyond its limits, and he couldn't urinate properly. The urine backed up into his system, poisoning him from the inside. Over the next 11 days, Brahe suffered an absolute agony. His abdomen swollen and tender, barely able to squeeze out a few painful drops of piss. The infection spread through his urinary tract, up to his kidneys, turning his insides into a cesspool of bacteria and pus. He died shortly after, all because he was too embarrassed to excuse himself from dinner and take a leak. The man who mapped the heavens was taken down by basic bodily functions and crippling social anxiety. He literally chose death over saying, "Excuse me, gotta go drain the lizard." Don't be like Tycho. When you gotta go, you gotta go. Imagine loving to dance so much that you literally can't stop. Not like, I'm having fun, can't stop, but like, my body physically will not stop moving even though I'm actively dying, can't stop. That's what happened in Strasbourg in July 1518 during the Dancing Plague. It started with one woman, Frau Trophia, who stepped into the street and just started dancing. Not at a party, not to music, just straight up busting moves for no apparent reason. And she didn't stop. For days, she danced continuously, her feet bleeding, her muscles screaming, her body begging for rest. But she kept dancing. Then other people joined in. Within a week, around 34 people were dancing non-stop. Within a month, about 400 people were all dancing like their lives depended on it. Except their lives actually depended on them stopping. These folks danced day and night, barely eating, barely drinking. Their feet bled, toes cracked and split open, blisters burst and oozed pus, but they kept going. Their hearts pounded faster and faster until some just gave out entirely. Thump. Dead. Mid-dance. Estimates suggest that around 15 people per day were dropping dead from heart attacks, strokes, or sheer exhaustion. Their bodies would seize up, foam would bubble from their mouths, and they'd hit the ground like a sack of potatoes. Then the survivors would just keep dancing around the corpses. The authorities thought the best solution was to encourage more dancing. They built stages, hired musicians, and created spaces for even more dancing. Spoiler alert, this made things catastrophically worse. Eventually, the plague subsided after about 2 months, but not before claiming dozens of lives. These people literally danced themselves to death. Their feet were mangled stumps, their hearts gave out, and they died doing the world's most morbid flash mob. So next time someone says, "Dance like nobody's watching," maybe sit that one out. Draco was an ancient Greek legislator famous for creating some of the harshest laws in history. Death penalty for stealing a cabbage? Yep, that was Draco's vibe. We literally get the word draconian from his name. Needless to say, he wasn't exactly beloved by the common people. But apparently, someone forgot to tell the theater crowd that. Around 600 BC, Draco attended a theater performance and the audience wanted to show their appreciation. Back in ancient Greece, the tradition was to throw your cloaks and hats at honored guests as a sign of respect. So the crowd started hurling their garments at Draco. Cloaks, tunics, hats, scarves, togas, you name it. At first, it probably felt pretty good. Oh wow, they love me! But the crowd got too enthusiastic. More and more clothing piled up. 1 cloak, 10 cloaks, 50 cloaks. Pretty soon, Draco was completely buried under a mountain of fabric. The weight of all that wool and linen pressed down on his chest, making it harder and harder to breathe. He probably tried to claw his way out, gasping for air, but the clothing kept coming. More layers, more weight, less oxygen. Nobody thought to stop throwing clothes and check on him. They just kept hurling garments at the pile. By the time they finally dug him out, his face was blue, his eyes bulged out, and he had suffocated to death under the weight of all that appreciation. So Draco, the man who wrote laws so harsh that minor offenses carried the death penalty, was killed by overwhelming fan affection. The irony is absolutely poetic. He spent his career making sure other people died for trivial reasons, and then he died in one of the most trivial ways imaginable. Smothered by second-hand clothing. The lesson? Maybe limit the clothing throws. Nobody ever suffocated from too much clapping. Well, probably not. Imagine dying in a literal tsunami of beer. Not a little spill, but a catastrophic 15-foot wave of alcohol that demolished buildings and drowned people. That's what happened in London on October 17, 1814, in the London beer flood. At the Moe & Company brewery, there was a massive vat holding over 135,000 imperial gallons of beer. This vat was over 22 feet tall and held together by giant iron hoops. One of these hoops ruptured, and the entire vat exploded like a bomb. When that vat burst, it created a domino effect, rupturing other nearby vats and unleashing about 388,000 gallons of beer into the streets. A massive 15-foot wave of beer came crashing through the brewery walls like a liquid avalanche, flooding the surrounding slum neighborhood. The beer wave demolished buildings, swept people off their feet, and trapped victims under debris. People were literally drowning in beer, their lungs filling with ale, their bodies battered by the force. At least 8 people died from drowning in beer, being crushed by the wave, or being trapped in collapsing buildings. One woman was having a tea party with her young daughter in their basement when the beer flood burst through their wall. The beer filled the room in seconds, trapping them both. They drowned together, their bodies found floating in beer-soaked rubble days later. Another victim was swept away and smashed against a wall, her skull cracked open by the force. The most absurd part? Local residents rushed out with buckets to scoop up the free beer before it drained away. Some people got down on their hands and knees and drank straight from the beer-flooded gutters like animals. Because nothing says appropriate disaster response like getting hammered at the scene where people just died. The brewery was taken to court, but the judge ruled it was an act of God, and nobody was held responsible. So, those 8 people died in a beer tsunami, and it was basically just chalked up to bad luck. What a way to go. And there you have it, the dumbest deaths in history. From shooting yourself in the guts to suffocating under fan jackets, these absolute morons found the most ridiculous ways to shuffle off this mortal coil. They died from holding their piss too long, dancing until their hearts exploded, and drowning in a beer tsunami. Absolute legends of stupidity. Next time you think you've made a bad decision, just remember, at least you didn't accidentally blow your own intestines out trying to win a court case. At least you didn't die because you were too polite to take a leak. Life is all about perspective, people. If you enjoyed learning about history's biggest idiots and their spectacularly dumb deaths, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more interesting content like this. Check out this next video where we explore even more unbelievable moments from history. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.